Everyone. This is How to Write a Book Part 6. For those of you who are watching my videos for the first time, I am an indie author. I have published 6 titles to date, with 2 more coming this year. My books are published in the thriller and the romantasy genres. This is a series to help new authors in their process of writing a book. I highly recommend that you start at part 1, just to make sure that you get all of the information. So in part 5 last week, it was time to send your work to beta readers. Hopefully, of the 5 that you hired, you got at least feedback from 3. 4 is best. Now it is time to revise your novel for the first time. I should say that while your first draft was likely rough, this is the time to kind of start polishing a little bit. It still doesn't have to be done because we still have several steps before publishing. But now is the time to really, if there were scenes that you rushed through before, scenes you skipped before, it is time to sit down and flesh those out. Then there are actually 2 options going forward. The best option for debut authors is to hire a developmental editor. A developmental editor will really help you fine tune your story. They will go beyond the feedback of betas and they will help you make sure you have a viable plot, characters, setting, everything. They will really help you to polish your work. That being said, dev editors are expensive. I personally am a dev editor on the side and I do charge 1 cent per word, which means if you have a manuscript of 90,000 words, you are looking at $900 for a dev edit. And now I totally understand that it is not possible for all new authors to hire a dev editor, which is why if you cannot hire a dev editor, I recommend doing another beta round. This time, if you were doing a second beta round in place of a dev editor, I do recommend getting some paid betas. You also need to use beta readers that are different from your first round, because if you use the same ones, they'll start to get fatigue of your story. That's another thing I recommend is I recommend using a different editor or different beta readers for all aspects of your book, just to make sure, first of all, that your book is exposed to as many eyes as possible and that you get lots of varying feedback, and also that way no one's skimming because they've read your book before. Um, Also, there is, I guess, one more option here. Instead of another beta round, you could also hire an alpha reader. An alpha reader is like a Temu version of a dev editor. That doesn't mean they're bad, it just means they're a lot cheaper, and then their feedback is not going to be as descriptive or as introflective as a true trained dev editor would be. None of these are bad choices. Again, the best choice is to hire a dev editor if you can. If you cannot, personally, I think a second beta round works better than an alpha reader, just because, a beta reader, their feedback is even less than an alpha reader, but it's usually cheaper and it can be done for free. And if you're skipping the dev editor, I think more is better than to focus all your eggs on one alpha reader. So after you hire the dev editor or the beta readers or the alpha reader, it is time to do another round of revisions. And trust me, by this point, you should be getting pretty sick of your own story. Um, but don't give up yet because you've got several more editing rounds to do, which I will cover in more detail next week. However, by the time you finish this step of the author process, either no matter who you hire, a dev editor, alpha reader, or beta readers, you should have a pretty decent book. Like this should be almost your final version. Sure, there's still going to be grammar and punctuation errors, and we will address that next week, but you should not leave this step without a book that you feel somewhat proud to publish. And if that is not true, then I recommend doing either another round of beta readers, again, different beta readers, or perhaps another round with the dev editor. Or if you skip the dev editor before, then get one now or wait until you have money to hire one, because we're getting to the point where you're almost done, and if you're not happy with your book at this stage, or you don't think it's finished, then there's a problem, and you need to basically fix that before you start pouring money into the next step of the book writing process. So tune in next week to find out what happens once you have basically what is going to become your finished novel.